If someone you loved died tomorrow, you already know you wouldn't just leave the body. You'd wash it, mark it, say something over it, even though none of that helps them anymore. It makes no logical sense. And yet every human culture that has ever existed does some version of it. That instinct is old. Older than farming, older than cities, maybe older than our own species. So where did it come from? To answer that, you have to understand what death looks like without us. For almost 4 billion years, life on this planet had one response to a dead body: nothing. An animal dies, and the others move on. The body stays where it falls, and the world recycles it. No grave, no ceremony, no pause. That's not cruelty. That's just the default setting for every living thing that has ever existed. And then, somewhere in the deep past, one kind of creature broke the rule. The problem is finding the exact moment it broke. Because grief doesn't fossilize. You can't dig up a feeling. All archaeologists have to work with is arrangement, where the bones ended up and whether nature could have put them there, or whether something chose to. Which brings us to a cave in South Africa, and one of the strangest discoveries in the entire story of being human. It's called Rising Star. Deep inside, down a vertical crack so narrow that most adults physically cannot fit through it, researchers found bones. Not one body, at least 15 individuals belonging to a species called Homo naledi, a small-brained relative of ours with a brain roughly a third the size of yours. And here's the part that broke the debate wide open. Those bodies were in a chamber almost impossible to reach. No signs they were dragged there by predators. No flood that could have washed them in. They appear to have been placed, deliberately, in the dark. If that's true, and this is where it gets heated, then a creature we wouldn't even call fully human was carrying its dead into the earth at least 240,000 years ago. Which would mean burial isn't something clever, big-brained humans invented. It might be older than us. We might have inherited it, but not everyone is convinced. And their skepticism is fair. Getting 15 bodies down that shaft would have taken planning, cooperation, maybe even fire to see in the dark. A lot to ask of a brain the size of an orange. Critics argue the bodies could have fallen in, or been swept there over centuries. The problem is, nobody has been able to prove how they got there naturally. The bones are in a place that makes no sense unless someone put them there. And until someone explains the how, the simplest answer is the unsettling one. Think about that for a second. The instinct to not walk away from your dead may be older than your own species. But let's say you're a skeptic. Let's move to a case nobody can wave away. The Neanderthals. For a long time, Neanderthals were the punchline of human history. The dumb, brutish cavemen who lost. That picture is almost completely wrong. In a cave called Shanidar in northern Iraq, archaeologists uncovered Neanderthal skeletons that had been placed in deliberate positions tens of thousands of years ago. One of them, an older man, had survived devastating injuries: a crushed eye socket, a withered arm, damage that would have left him blind on one side and barely able to fend for himself. He lived for years like that, which means somebody fed him, somebody protected him. A group of supposedly savage cavemen kept a disabled man alive long past the point where he was any use to their survival. And when he finally died, they didn't leave him where he fell. They laid him to rest. That is not the behavior of animals that don't care. That's care itself, 50,000 years old. And Shanidar isn't alone. In France, at a site called La Chapelle-aux-Saints, researchers found another Neanderthal. An old man, nearly toothless, his spine bent with arthritis. Somebody had chewed his food soft for him. Somebody had helped him walk. And when he died, roughly 60,000 years ago, his body was placed in a shallow pit, curled up, protected from the animals that would have scattered him. For over a century, that skeleton shaped how we picture cavemen: hunched, primitive, slow. We got the posture right and the story completely wrong. He wasn't hunched because Neanderthals were brutes. He was hunched because he was old, and his people had carried him there. By the time you get to our own species, anatomically modern humans, the evidence stops being a debate and starts being a pattern. At a site called Kafze in Israel, roughly 100,000 years ago, humans buried their dead with something new: objects. A child laid to rest with deer antlers placed on the chest, bodies sprinkled with red ochre, a pigment the color of blood. And that changes everything, because the moment you bury someone with something, you've stopped thinking of death as an ending. That red ochre is worth stopping on, because it shows up everywhere. Not just at Kafze, in graves across Africa, Europe, and Asia, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years from people who never met and couldn't have copied each other. Over and over, unconnected humans reached for the same blood-red powder to send off their dead. When cultures that never touched invent the same ritual independently, it's usually because it's tapping into something wired deep. and a body painted the color of blood looks, for a moment, like it might not be gone at all. A body doesn't need antlers. A corpse doesn't need red paint or tools or food. If you're putting those things in the ground, it's because some part of you believes the person isn't fully gone, that they're going somewhere and they might need what you're sending with them. That's not disposal. That's a theory about the universe, the oldest theory we have. This is the real turning point in the whole story. Burial isn't really about the body, it's about the mind that buries it. To dig a grave, you have to do something no other animal on Earth can do. You have to hold two impossible ideas at the same time, that this person existed and that they no longer do. You have to imagine an absence. You have to picture a future without someone in it, and feel the weight of that, and then act on it. That's memory, imagination, and love running at the same time. The same machinery that lets you miss someone, or dread tomorrow, or hope. A grave is the fingerprint of a mind that had become fully human. And once that instinct appeared, it never left. It only grew. Humans started marking graves with stones, so the place couldn't be forgotten. They lined bodies with flowers. We know because pollen clings to ancient soil. They dug graves that pointed toward the rising sun, as if the dead were being aimed at something. They built tombs, then monuments, then entire cities of the dead. The pyramids are just this same instinct, scaled up until it could be seen from space. Every headstone in every cemetery you've ever walked past is the direct descendant of that first body, laid down in the dark by someone who couldn't bear to walk away. So here's the full picture. For 4 billion years, life on Earth treated death as nothing. Then a small-brained cousin may have carried its dead into a cave. Then the brutish Neanderthals kept a broken man alive and laid him to rest. Then our own ancestors started burying their people with gifts for a journey they believed was still happening. Every step built on the one before it, until grief became one of the most human things there is. Which brings us back to you. You live in a world that has solved almost everything the ancient world couldn't. And you still cannot look at the body of someone you love and treat it like an object. You still lower your voice near a grave. You still keep the dead in the ground and in your head long after they can do anything for you. That's not weakness, and it's not just culture. It's 100,000 years old at least. It's the oldest evidence of a soul we'll ever find. The first people to bury their dead couldn't write. They left no names, no words, no explanation. But they told us the most important thing about themselves anyway. Pressed into the ground, wrapped around the bodies of the people they loved. They were saying, this one mattered. And that's the most human thing there is. If you made it this far, you're the kind of person this channel is for. Subscribe. See you in the next video.